So proteins. Proteins are made out of amino acids, and their shape is key to their function. So here I have two examples of protein. On the left side, I have an antibody. So an antibody is a protein that helps you to fight viruses and bacteria. So it actually helps you to be healthy. On the right side, I have an enzyme. An enzyme is a very special protein that makes a reaction happen much faster. And we'll spend an entire chapter just talking about enzymes. So there's like a whole diversity when it comes to the function of proteins. They serve a structural role. They serve as a protective role, so they help you fight viruses and bacteria. They help you to control cell activity. They allow your muscles to contract. They also allow you to move things in and out of the cell. Again, there's like a whole diversity when it comes to the function of proteins. So proteins are made out of amino acids. So there's 20 amino acids. 8 of them is what we call essential amino acids, which means that your body cannot synthesize. So you get them by the food that you ingest. So it is extremely important to have a balanced diet. Now, when we look at the structure of the amino acids, they share 3 things in common. The first one is what we call an amino group. An amino group is basically a nitrogen bonded to 3 hydrogens. They also share a carbon to hydrogen bond. And the last thing is a carboxyl group, which is basically a carbon bonded to 2 oxygen. Now, what's different between the 20 amino acids is what we call the R group. The R group can be as simple as basically another carbon bonded to 3 hydrogens, or it can actually have a benzene ring. So if an amino acid has a benzene ring, that means that it's going to have an odor. So what gives the odor is the benzene ring. Again, what is different between the 20 amino acids is basically the R group. And the last of the biomolecules life is nucleic acids, whether it's DNA or RNA. There's difference between DNA and RNA, and we'll highlight those differences. So DNA, it is extremely important because it determines a lot of things about you. And we'll talk about that on the later chapters. So nucleic acids are composed of nucleotides. Each nucleotide consists of phosphates. It consists of a sugar. In the case of DNA, it's the oxyribose. In the case of RNA, it's just ribose. And basically, it's all composed of a base. Now, the bases comes in 5 different flavors. So if we're talking about DNA, it's going to be adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. Now, if we are talking about RNA, you take away thymine and then you replace it by uracil. Again, nucleic acids are composed of nucleotide. A nucleotide consists of phosphates, a sugar. In the case of DNA, it's deoxyribose. In the case of RNA, it's ribose, and then one of the bases. And like we talk about it, it's adenine, guanine, cytosine, thymine, and in the case of RNA, it's uracil replaces thymine. Alright, so now we're going to shift gears and we're going to talk about my favorite molecule, which is water. We're going to talk about the different characteristics of water, why is water so important. Again, if you guys remember, 75% of your body is water. The reactions that happen in your body happen under the presence of water. So let's talk about all the different unique properties of water. So water is such a good solvent because it is a polar molecule. So water is composed of an oxygen and 2 hydrogen molecules. Oxygen is one of the most electronegative elements in the periodic table, which means that it likes electrons. And so what happens is that the electron from the hydrogen spends the majority of the time near the oxygen. Now, because the electron has a minus charge, that gives the oxygen a partial negative charge. At the same time, that also gives the hydrogen a partial positive charge. And so what happens with the water molecule is that it has a charge. And so it likes to interact with other molecules that actually have a charge, for example, sodium chloride. Sodium chloride is composed of a sodium, which has a positive charge, and chloride, which has a minus charge. And so what happens is that the water molecule surrounds the sodium chloride, and the oxygen interacts with the sodium, and the hydrogens interact with the chloride, and they basically tear apart sodium chloride, or salts in this case. So there's a lot of things that actually dissolve in water, but not everything. Another important property of water is that whenever you have 2 water molecules, they actually interact with one another and they form hydrogen bonds. Now, the formation of hydrogen bonds gives water like tremendous properties, and we'll talk about those properties later. So one important property of water is that it can absorb a lot of energy, and that's due because of the hydrogen bonds the water makes with other water molecules. So the reason why you're able to cook is basically because of the hydrogen bonds. Another important thing about water is that whenever it becomes solid, in this case ice, it's actually less thin than the liquid. And that's why you see that ice actually floats in water. Another important feature of water is what we call cohesion. Cohesion is basically interaction of two water molecules together, versus adhesion, which is basically water interacting with other surfaces. And as I already mentioned before, solid water is less dense than liquid water, and that's why you see that ice actually floats in water. Another important feature of water is that it can act as an acid or a base. So the pH scale measures how acidic or basic something is. The closer you are to 0, the more acidic you are. The closer you are to 14, the more basic you are. And if you are around 7, that means you're neutral. The water can act as an acid or a base. So acids have a higher concentration of hydrogen ions, and on the pH scale, it's actually closer to 0, versus the base. Bases have a lower concentration of hydrogen ions, and on the pH scale, it's actually closer to 14. And if you are around 7, you are neither acidic nor basic, you're basically neutral. And that's the pH of the blood that we have in our body, it's neutral.